Hi, welcome to our Spotlight Podcast. Today we are turning our attention to an idea that is really near and dear to my heart, and that is music therapy. We have a great interview lined up with Nikki McCarthy, and Nikki will tell us about her experience, how she became aware of music therapy, and some of the great work that they're doing now in the state of Ohio. But I start with a definition. I went to the American Music Therapy Association website and just typed in a simple question: what is music therapy? And this is what was returned. Music therapy is the clinical and evidence-based use of music interventions to accomplish individualized goals within a therapeutic relationship by a credentialed professional who has completed an approved music therapy program. Pretty straightforward. So we're going to ask Nikki about that. We're going to ask Nikki about music therapy. We're going to ask her about her experience. We're going to ask about how somebody becomes a music therapist and some of the populations that a music therapist may work with. Looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be a good one. And I hope you find that it's educational as well. Nikki, thank you for joining us on our podcast. Before we get into the nuts and the bolts of the music therapy discussion, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about the organization that you work for, and some of the good work that you folks do?
Okay. Well, my name is Nikki McCarthy. I am the founder and executive director of an organization called SAM. We are a registered 501c3 in the state of Ohio, based in Columbus, Ohio. Our organization is dedicated to supporting and enhancing music and art therapy programs that serve seriously ill children and their families. I founded the organization with my husband 3 years ago in memory of our daughter, Samantha Jane, who passed away in October of 2009. And, Samantha loved her music therapist, and for a number of years we raised money for a disease that she had called Fanconi anemia that required a bone marrow transplant. And after some time, we just kind of decided that rather than focusing on research and things like that, we wanted to focus on sort of the life of families and children who were sick. So, and that was something that brought them joy and comfort. So this is where we landed. So SAM was started.
I'm sure I speak for all of us who listen to this conversation in expressing our sympathy for the loss of your daughter.
Thank you for that.
It's
not easy.
I'm sure that it's not. I first became aware of your organization maybe a year ago. I don't remember exactly when, but there was a great profile on the Today Show.
Yeah.
And this has really been on my mind for some time to talk to you folks. So I'm really happy that you were able to call in today. What can you tell me? What was your background before this?
Well, basically I was a mom. I mean, I have Sam was my oldest, only daughter. I also have 3 boys. Ranging in age from my oldest boy is now 18 to my youngest son is 11. So I had 4 kids. I was a stay-at-home mom. Samantha was diagnosed at the age of 7. And for a number of years, we went on with our lives as somewhat as normal after that diagnosis until they told us it was time to have a transplant. Prior to that, I was working in an accounting firm and things like that, but, I had just been doing the mom thing for a number of years. So that's kind of my background.
Yeah, I'm sure going through that experience is quite an education in and of itself.
Yes, definitely. You almost become, there were many, many days and nights in the hospital, and you almost consider yourself, I know there's a number of people who call themselves momcologists, who are mothers of, cancer patients and things like that. I mean, sometimes you just learn so many things that way more than you ever thought you would about things like that. So,
I'm, Nikki, I'm sure there's a lot of things we could talk about related to that, but what I want to do today is talk specifically about the music therapy. How did that enter your life as it relates to your daughter?
Well, Samantha had her transplant at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. And we went into the hospital August of 2008, and we were there for at least 100 days, so just over 3 months. So, but the first part of that was in complete isolation. So you don't leave your room. Well, Sam didn't leave the room. But during that time, especially for patients who are in long-term care, there's all kinds of people who come in all day long, nurses, doctors, physical therapy, occupational therapy. But one person that kind of was different was her music therapist, and his name is Brian Schreck. Brian is no longer at Cincinnati Children's, but he's still in the music therapy field. He works with adults now. But Brian was someone that had just a very easy relationship with Sam. I mean, because a lot of the time that she was in the hospital, she was very sick and very uncomfortable. I could talk about that in a much different podcast. But she, it was not an easy time. And so Brian would come in, and he was probably the one person that if he knocked on the door, she was welcoming every single time. It didn't matter how sick she was. She always wanted to see him. And he would bring in a cart full of instruments. She played the piano, so he brought her a keyboard that he let her keep in the room for a long time. And, he would just kind of come in the door, sit on the bed with her and say, "What do you want to do today?" And, he never asked her for anything. He didn't ask her to take her temperature. He didn't ask her to take medicine. He didn't ask her, to do hard things. He asked her what she wanted to do, and she got to make that decision. And that was something that, brought her comfort and made her happy for maybe an hour, 45 minutes a day, or whenever he visited. It wasn't every day, but, and as a parent, when you watch your child going through all of these difficult things, when they feel good and they're doing something that's fun that doesn't happen very often, you take a deep breath and you can relax. And that's what he did for her, and that's what he did for us. And we never forgot that. And it was very meaningful. And so when we decided to do something that was our inspiration. So
tell us a little bit more about that decision, that the decision to develop a music therapy program based on that experience, but given the fact that you really didn't have any experience with this prior to your daughter.
Sure. Well, we during the time that we spent, dealing with this illness from start to finish, really, and I say finish being, after Sam passed away, it was years, and we gained a lot of support from family and friends. And after being so attached to our story, everyone continued to want to help us. And that was very meaningful. And so my husband and I, we spent a lot of time fundraising for Fanconi anemia and research, which we still like to give to. And so many people wanted to help us do that. And when we said, we want to shift our focus to something else. And they always knew that was important because it was always part of our story was the music therapy. Like, people knew about Brian, and we always just kind of kept in touch with him. And it was an idea that we had, Dan and I, for years. And a friend of mine who owns a boutique in the city that we live in said she wanted to do some philanthropy. She's a small business owner, and she had established herself, and she said, I want to help you with what you are doing. And I said, well, here's what I really want to do. I want to start this nonprofit, and I think we could do really great things. And she said, let's have a fundraiser. And so I got online, and I researched how you start a nonprofit. I think I probably Googled exactly that, and figured out how to fill out the paperwork and register with the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State. And the next thing you know, we did it. And that was kind of our inspiration. It was all these people that were helping us and that would support us. And now, here we are years later doing something we love to do.
And how many years has this been a going concern now?
We were officially declared a nonprofit in May of 2015. So we're 3.5, almost 4 years now.
And so how does that work? What services do you provide?
Well, we support programs. Most of them, some of it, there's a range. The first program that we started and helped to support was at the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, because that was where our story began. So that was important for us. And when we told them that what we were doing and that we wanted to help them, we asked them what they needed. And for them, they needed money to fund a grant for a part-time art therapist. And so we said, great, we love that idea, because music and art, they kind of go together. And we didn't have as much experience with art therapy, but it's a huge, huge program as well. And so we'd love to support both. And then we went to Nationwide Children's, and we said, we have this money, and we'd like to help you, because that's our hometown and where Sam's care began at Nationwide and her care ended at Nationwide. And along the way, in between, they were always part of the process. And so at Nationwide, we support a program that provides a outpatient music therapist. So Jessica is her name, and she travels around the city to homebound patients and brings the music therapy into their homes, which is an amazing, amazing program, because sometimes when you leave the hospital, which was our experience, you don't get the same services all the time. And especially music and art therapy, because first of all, they're not always at the top of the list, obviously, and so this is a really special thing for us. So it just ranges. So we have the foundation, and then we provide grants and funding to different partners. And right now we have 4 different hospitals that we fund different programs. In Akron, we do a artist in residence program that where community artists come in, whether it's music or dance or artists, and they will work with patients and staff and families once a month, do all kinds of programming there. And then in Dayton, they didn't have any music therapy in their hospital, and when they expanded, we helped pilot the program that they're currently trying to establish there. So we're really proud of that too. So it just ranges.
If I'm hearing you correctly, your primary function then is fundraising, mm-hmm. and so what are some of your fundraising efforts? What do they look like?
Well, those range anywhere from our big fundraiser that we do in the fall that I was telling you about with my friend who owns the boutique. We're going on our 4th year. It's kind of a big music and fashion presentation, and so we have bands, and we have it's a beautiful evening of she does the fashion presentation because she owns a clothing boutique, and then we have music. We have a big silent auction. We've raised above last year in our third year, we raised over $100,000 that night. So that's our big kind of gala. We have a 5K race that we do each year. We just had our 5th year of that, and we typically raise somewhere between 20 and 30,000 a year on that. You know, I have a charity happy hour one night. I have, you know, concerts that kids put on. You know, there's kids I know who do lemonade stands and send me money. I mean, I've not really sort of delved into corporate fundraising or anything, but those are kind of some of the newer things. You know, we started out as a fundraising, you know, recipient, and so that's kind of how we are working right now, but trying to figure out, you know, we do peer-to-peer fundraising. You know, it's a huge range right now, so.
I'm sure we'll circle back to that because eventually I want to ask how people can help you. So I want to circle back to that, but I want to, if we could, let's talk about music therapy just in general.
Okay.
Now, so as I understand it, Sam's Fans, your organization, raises money through a variety of ways to help hospitals and other organizations fund music therapy programs and possibly other programs like art therapy. So I would imagine that, as you say, funding for art therapy, funding for music therapy may not be always highest on the priority list. So I suppose your goal is to help raise the money that otherwise might not be there for these programs. So, but the music therapists themselves then that go into the hospitals, do you know what their backgrounds are? Do they need to be certified? If somebody were interested in doing that sort of work, how do they get there? Do they need to be licensed in the state of Ohio or in other states if you're aware of that, or you know, is there a specific education track that they would go through? How does that work?
Yes, in fact there is. So the licenses vary from state to state. In fact, in Ohio they're working on some bills to license music therapists, but it's you have to be a board certified music therapist. Which requires you need to complete an approved music therapy program at a accredited college or university. You need to complete 1,200 hours of field work as part of that degree program, and then you need to take and pass the exam that's administered by the Board of Music Therapists. So there is quite an extensive, you know, background needed for that. And apparently, you know, which I didn't really realize until recently, but there's, music therapy bachelor's degree. I think there's 74 approved schools in the United States. So, nice. And then you can also get masters and doctorates in music therapy. So.
Do you know if it's the same in most states?
As far as the licensing goes?
Yes.
Or the licensing is different. I think that's one thing, but across the to get the degree, those are all the same things. I think that once you're board certified, you can go anywhere. I think, for sure.
So there may be reciprocity in other states.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of maybe a little bit of an inside baseball question here, but these services that are provided at Cincinnati Children's Hospital and other organizations, are those generally covered by a third-party insurance?
Well, that's yes, and it's usually something. So once you get in, you're in the hospital, it's sort of written in your like it's almost like an order that the doctors will order. Oh, this person should be seen by a music therapist. So those people work for the hospital, and then yes, it's part of that. But I think what is the licensure, I think it makes it easier to report it for insurance purposes and things like that. That's why I think that's important, and that's why I think some of the states vary in different ways on what they need and stuff like that. So once you're in the hospital, it's usually part of the program. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can't speak directly to that, but I'm sort of starting to learn about it because I didn't even realize it. So now that it's very interesting. So
I think when people think about music therapy, they envision someone with a guitar walking into a hospital room and playing a little soothing tune for somebody who may be a patient there at the hospital. But I've got to believe there's a lot more to it than that. Can you maybe talk about what a typical music therapy session might entail?
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of what it is, but there's a lot more to it than that. I think, it can go a wide range. I mean, it takes a person, they go into the room, they really need to assess the situation and see what the patient can do, what they need. Sometimes they can help cope with stress, pain, and anxiety, things like that. They can make a certain procedure a little bit easier on people. One of the things that we've been hearing, this is really exciting for our organization, because for sort of our purposes of website and showing our donors and things like that, what we've been doing, we've really taken a closer look at what the music therapists actually do, and we've sort of gone and documented some of that, and it's been really neat to see. We have a patient, we have a family that receives music therapy services from our outpatient therapist, Jessica, and she goes into his home, and he's completely nonverbal, but they've been working together for a long time, and they've written songs together based on things that he likes to do. He reacts by blinking and eye signals, and they've actually gone to and written a song together. And his mom takes part in the process and plays the instruments, and you can just see on his face the joy that it's bringing. And then she talks about how we have another mom who talks about how they go back and use these songs to soothe their children when things aren't easy, and so it goes into their everyday life, which is really, really cool. So that's kind of what it looks like and can look like. So
that must be very gratifying for you.
It is. I remember when we recorded the Today Show, they asked me if I'd ever been, on, at visits or anything, and it's a very personal experience. I know what it felt like for me, but it's not something that you can just pop in and watch. You know what I mean? I know sometimes doctors and you have rounds and you have student things like that, but it's not just something that we would ever. It's very personal, and so they were surprised that I didn't know what it looked like. And so when I went and saw it, and now that I'm being able to see what it looks like, it's so gratifying just seeing. I only know from my own experience, and really our donors and our followers really only know from my experience, and so getting to show them what we're seeing, and it's not just patients who are cancer patients or bone marrow like Sam was. They're kids who. It's just this wide range of, babies in the NICU to rehab patients. And, that's the beauty of SAM stands, is that we're not focused on one thing. It can be any patient in the hospital. It can be staff. It can be, because not only is the patient in the room, participating, but sometimes it's the sibling or the family member that, also gets involved, which is amazing to see. So,
you mentioned the Today Show. We I don't think you and I would be having this conversation if it weren't for the Today Show.
Right.
And I subsequently, found your website, and I signed up for your emails, and I get newsletter. I get information from you now that I would not have been getting if it weren't for the Today Show. How did that come about?
A friend of mine responded to a call, one of their, something that said, tell us about someone that you know who has a great story about music that, is making a difference in people's lives. And my very best friend, who also is sort of my associate director at Sam Sands, she is also in her other life a grant writer. And so she went online and filled out this form, and they called her and they said, "We love your story." And she said, "Well, this is my best friend." And it was during the year, I don't know, well, it was a year ago now, but it was a long time before they actually called her back and said they were going to do the show and that they wanted to. So she responded to one of their asks, and that's how they did it. And she kind of didn't tell me for a really long time while she was sort of in touch with this producer. And it was a funny story because I called her one day and I said, "I've got this great idea. I want to do a board meeting, and I want to do it at the hospital." And I said, "I want to do it on June, 12th. And she said, "Okay, well, let's talk about that." And I thought, "Oh, okay, And she said, she called me for coffee the next day, and we met, and she said, "So I've got something to tell you." And I was like, "Okay, And it turned out that the Today Show wants to come the same date that I wanted to do my my board meeting. And I said, "Well, I think we could postpone the board meeting for the Today Show piece." So they came and interviewed us for 2 days. We went to the hospital, and we did some video of the actual music therapist, and that sort of came together at the end with a really fun concert that they were going to also put in the piece. And during that concert, Hoda came out and surprised me, and then she brought my favorite music artist, who the story was kind of based on this song that he had written and my daughter loved, and she recorded with the music therapist. And then he showed up and sang the song and promised to come back and do the concert. In fact, just this past May, almost a year after that Today Show aired, we had that concert, and he came back to Columbus, and we raised like $30,000 that night. So it was an amazing gift that we were able to, be on that show and, have that stage. And, it was amazing. So it was all because my best friend, her name's Mandy, so it was great.
Did you, I imagine you heard from a lot of people like me, people that weren't in the state of Ohio, that you might not have been able to reach.
It was a really interesting thing. We just before that, during the time that we were getting ready for that, kind of in between the time that they did it and the time that it aired, we made some changes with our, because I had a friend who went through sort of a similar thing, and she was at one point with her nonprofit on sort of a national stage like that. She said, there's some things that you might want to do to get ready, and we set up kind of a donor management thing, and we had just gotten it set up, and the piece aired, and during that day, I said, we expected to get kind of a flood of responses, from that show. And I later in the day, I was like, well, I haven't really gotten any of those things. I said, maybe they forgot to put the website on there. I said, either way, I'm just really happy about how the story came out and what it looked like. And I finally logged on to the thing, and I realized that all the emails that I was getting were going to my junk mail. And I had hundreds of donations and sign-ups to our website, and I finally figured out where they were later in the day. And it was just this, I think we probably got donations close to $5,000 in that one day, just from that story. It was just so cool. And they were all like, but there were people like $5 all the way up to like $250. It was this range of people, and like these nice people who were your story touched my heart. I had a very similar experience, and it was, I mean, so heartwarming, and it's still, I saved them all, and it was really, really cool. So it was a fun day.
Yeah.
And I have people all the way, I mean, California, New York, I mean, everywhere, all parts of the country. So it was neat.
That's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you about some other. We've talked about children here, but what about?
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that music therapy would have a role in a lot of different disciplines or a lot of different issues. I have seen articles or stories about the use of music therapy with folks who have dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Has your organization had any experience with that population?
You know, we haven't yet. We're only in the children's hospitals, but I do see a lot of stories about how music can really take people back to certain times and certain memories in their life. And I mean, it makes complete sense to me because, you know, I mean, that's what I love about, and part of my healing was, you know, when you hear a certain song, you just can be transported right to the moment that memory was created. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And I mean, that population really helps, especially you know, Alzheimer's patients and things like that. It does great work. I wish I could give you more, you know, background on it, but I just only have really seen it in articles and things like that. But I look forward to maybe a time when we can sort of branch into that population as well.
I would think that music therapy would have a role with working with folks who are on the autism spectrum, folks who have PTSD, depression, anxiety, a host of mental health issues. I'm a big believer in it. I think there would be a lot of value in that. So I'm encouraged to hear that you guys are going to look into those kinds of issues.
You know, I'm really excited about that too. One of the things that Nationwide Children's in Columbus is doing, they're opening, I don't know when exactly it is, but the building is under construction, an entire behavioral health you know, building, and completely dedicated to that. And I would really like to be part of that work that they're doing there, because it's really groundbreaking and it's really important right now. You know, when you look at young people and how much younger they are with, you know, eating disorders and, you know, depression, and I mean, like middle school kids having to deal with things like this. So if there's anything that we can do, we hope to be part of that. So it's important these days.
It is, and that's part of why we're doing this podcast series. There was a story on the national news just the other night about suicide, and in you know, the teen age population, and how it's on the increase, and all of the issues related to that. I mean, I think it's a vitally important that we look at these behavioral health issues, and we look at, and I think it's important to look at alternative treatments, and I'm including music therapy in that. Maybe that's not an accurate description to say an alternative, but that's what I mean: music therapy and art therapy, and look at other ways of treating some of these behavioral health issues. So, but it takes folks like you to get it done.
Well, and I agree. I mean, you know, when I speak with, you know, the palliative care team, which is, you know, kind of, sometimes it's lumped together with hospice, you know, but they kind of like to, if you can get in, maybe a person is diagnosed with like a long-term illness, you know, that it might not be just the end of life, but if you add in these more, I don't know if even holistic care is the right answer. Sometimes, you know, if you do other forms of therapy rather than, you know, maybe you give, there's actual studies that show, you know, less medication is required if you have these other opportunities. So I think there's something really important there. So you can decrease anxiety, which is helps with heart rate and pulse and things like that. I mean, it's actually research is being done on it. So
that makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Nikki, how can the folks who are listening to this help you?
Well, you can log on to our website at www.samsfans.org. You can make a donation if you're in our area and you want to attend one of our events. We have everything listed there, and really you can learn about our impact that we're having, like all of our different programs. We even have a scholarship now available for a music therapy student. So we're always, monetary, volunteer, and really just kind of learning about it and spreading awareness is important as well. So everything's on our website.
And can you say the website again one more time?
www.samfans.org.
We will include that in the description of the podcast. Are you on social media as well? Can people find you on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or any of those?
Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at SamFans15. That's our handle on all social media. We have a blog too on our website that has a lot of stories, and probably can explain better than what I've even talked about here. Because sometimes it's hard to explain, but lots of really great things on there. And a lot of the work that we're doing too as well.
Nikki, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I'm really impressed. I think it's great work. I think it's much needed work. And I want to thank you for taking the time. This has really been fun.
Thank you. I appreciate the time to talk about it. I'm learning more as I go, and it's like I said, it started from just my experience, but I think it's even bigger than that, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you today. So thank you.
I want to thank our guest, Nikki McCarthy, for her time today. I'm sure Nikki's told her story many times over, but it sure can't be easy. And I'm really appreciative of how brave she is and that she took the time to help us understand a little bit more about Sam's Fans and the work that they're trying to do. I really encourage you to check out their website, check them out on social media. If you can find the Today Show segment somewhere online, I would encourage you to watch that as well. I'm really, really impressed with this organization. I would like ADE to do as much as we can to help them. So you may look for some more information on some of our websites and social media about how we can direct some attention to this fantastic group. So thanks again to Nikki. Thanks to all of you for listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of the ADE Spotlight Podcast. If you would like to be a guest on one of our podcasts, or if you have an idea for a topic you'd like us to cover, please feel free to drop us a line. We'd love to hear your suggestions. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to check out ADE Solutions, a new website from ADE. There you will find a variety of quizzes and assessments covering a whole range of behavioral health related topics, including substance use, gambling, mental health disorders, eating disorders, and the like. If you have concerns about yourself or a loved one in these areas, please access the website and check out the assessments. Or if you simply want to expand your knowledge on these topics, on the education tab on that website, we have a variety of quizzes as well as other podcasts similar to the one that you just listened to. You can find that at www.ade.solutions, or you can link to it from our corporate website, www.adeincorp.com.